Resilient 305 strategy, it takes a village. Before we get started, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. One, this webinar is being recorded and you'll receive the link in a follow-up email tomorrow afternoon. Secondly, if we do experience technical difficulties, we ask that you bear with us while we deal with them and resolve the issues. And finally, we will be doing a Q&A at the end of this webinar. So we ask that you use the Q&A function, which you can find in your Zoom toolbar, either at the top or at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to enter questions throughout the webinar and we'll get to them at the end. So again, thank you all of you for joining us. My name is Olivia and I'm the Director of Programs for the Cleo Institute and I'm going to be your host. I'm joined today by Julieta Rodrigo, who's Cleo's Associate Program Manager, and two of our guest speakers, Karina Castillo and Galen Troyer, who are both resilience coordinators for the Office of Resilience at Miami-Dade County. So very quickly, for those of you who are not familiar with Cleo, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization with offices in Miami, Orlando, and Tallahassee. And we are solely dedicated to climate change, education, engagement, and advocacy. When we are not at home doing a lot of online work, you usually see us in the community, helping people connect the dots on climate change and finding ways that they can get involved in climate action. So just to contextualize a little bit today's webinar, I want to go over very quickly the climate crisis and what's really causing the issue. So very simply put, humankind is very dependent on fossil fuels such as oil, coal, and gas to meet our energy needs. And when we burn fossil fuels, we emit a lot of excess greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and others. These gases that we're emitting in excess amounts trap heat in our atmosphere. And as a result of this, our planet is warming. So what we're faced with is climate change, or also known as global warming. And as our planet warms, we're seeing much hotter temperatures. And these impact everything and every aspect of our lives, from our health to our economy, our access to water and food, the survival of our biodiversity, and of course, extreme weather events. Actually, I just got a newsletter from NOAA this morning that is saying that this last, I think March was the second hottest March ever recorded on record. And 2020 is on a trend to become the second warmest year ever on record. And I'm mentioning this because in Florida, we are especially vulnerable to the climate crisis. And some of the impacts that we're already experiencing that many of us are aware of are sea level rise, our exposure to extreme heat, and of course, extreme weather events that we're very familiar with, such as hurricanes and flooding. And all of these impacts have very serious climate justice implications, especially in Miami-Dade County, where 60% of our residents are considered poor or working poor. And I'm mentioning these different things because I want to highlight that everything is very closely interconnected when it comes to the climate crisis, and that makes it a very complex issue. And as a complex issue, we really need to approach it in a particular way. And that means that we need to look at these concerns and these problems through a much broader lens. We have to look at it from an interdisciplinary perspective, and we have to make sure that all different stakeholders are included at the decision-making table. The graph that you see here, I pulled from the Resilient 305 strategy website, and really just to illustrate that the Resilient 305 roadmap really does take a holistic approach to looking and strengthening community resilience. So before I get started and we let Karina take over and talk a little bit about Resilient 305 strategy, I just want to poll everyone and get an idea of how familiar you are with this strategy. Julieta, would you like to launch the poll? So how familiar are you with the Resilient 305 strategy? Very familiar, somewhat familiar, not familiar at all? Give you a few more seconds to answer. We can end the poll, Julieta, and share the results. Okay, so only about 15% of you are very familiar, and I'm glad to hear that because this is a really great learning opportunity, and I'm excited to see, how much you guys gain from the two speakers that we're bringing on today. So we can stop sharing. And Karina, I would like to hand you the mic, and please go ahead and share your screen.
Hi, Olivia and Julieta, sorry. It's not giving me the ability to share my screen.
Okay, that's odd. Let me just, okay, try that now.
Yes, that worked.
Great.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you really to Olivia, Julieta, and the rest of the Cleo staff and supporters for inviting myself and Galen from the County Office of Resilience to share a little bit with you about who we are and the work that we've done with Resilient 305. So our Office of Resilience really started, we were originally known as the Office of Sustainability, and then in 2015, with the help of some of you on this webinar and some other community leaders, really came to the County Commission and said that they wanted to see more being done with sea level rise and more money allocated. And thus, Jim Murley was hired as a Chief Resilience Officer, and a little bit after that, we were renamed the Office of Resilience. So like Olivia said, at the Office of Resilience in the county, we take a holistic approach to resilience. And so we've adopted the definition of the 100 Resilient Cities and the Rockefeller Foundation as resilience being about how we learn and we bounce back or bounce forward, survive, adapt, and grow no matter what chronic stresses or acute shocks we face. And so this is, you know, just a graphic from one of our partners. And so in the fall of 2016, the county, along with the City of Miami and the City of Miami Beach, were accepted into the 100 Resilient Cities Network to be to produce a Resilient 305 strategy. And so it involved a lot of hard work, and it took 3 years to produce this strategy through community engagement, through lots of listening sessions, through various trainings, support from our strategy partner, and the Miami Foundation, which we couldn't have done it without any of them. And so in the fall of 2006 was the official launch. We went into phase 1, which was listening and learning from mayors, from community members. In phase 2, we continued planning. So that was about almost a year later that planning continued to synthesize and take a look at what are shocks and stresses that we have in Miami-Dade County. And on the next slide, I'll go ahead and see and share with you what was identified. And then 3 years later, in May of last year, we had a big party and released our Resilient 305 strategy. And since then, we've been working on implementing and institutionalizing some of the resilience principles in the strategy and actions. So in all of our conversations, if you look at this graphic here, it looks a little complicated, but it's not. On the left-hand side, you're going to, in the circles of the different colors, those are what we consider our chronic stresses. It's things that we know have existed in our community and to some extent will continue to exist. Income inequality, housing quality and affordability, aging infrastructure, of course, sea level rise and coastal erosion. And then we all know that Miami traffic. And so the orange at the top are really shocks that have come to our system. And so it's just like a timeline almost. And I think you can, we all recognize that, of course, the coronavirus is yet another shock to greater Miami and the beaches. So we had Zika in 2017, and now we're gonna add the coronavirus to this timeline. And so our strategy really, after all listening and knowing that those were our shocks and stresses, we had to come up with actions that really address them. And so the strategy was developed and divided up into 3 goal areas: places, people, and pathways. We started with places because, of course, when you think about resilience, most people think about climate resilience. And so we thought, well, we need to start with what people are going to identify with the most. And so in places we talk about mobility options, we talk about how to protect ourselves from climate change, sea level rise, how do we increase energy efficiency, how do we think about electrification of our cars and access, and then of course, how do we address housing affordability. The second goal area is around people, because you can't have a resilient place without resilient people, and people are the heart and soul of our community. And so in this goal area, we try to highlight or come up with programs that are going to train people, that are going to produce living wage jobs, that are going to create access for small businesses, that are going to tackle public health priorities like the current pandemic. And then of course, how do we communicate about the concept of resilience? And then we finish off with pathways. And pathways is really the goal area where we think about connecting places and people. And this goal area is really about how can we better leverage the resources that we have, how can we better leverage the financial resources that we have, and then how can we work together? All of us know that we have a very large community, very different community, even one block to the next. So how can we work across jurisdictions and across communities to work together to build this holistic resilience? And I always like to say that the resilience is really about the fabric of our community, right? So we hope that the 59 different action items spread throughout the 3 goal areas, once done and implemented, are going to help our community generally. Now, this is just all the actions, and one thing that's really important to note is that when we were writing the actions, we took a hard look at what were things that we could do in the immediate, the short term, and then the midterm. So you can find this on resilient305.com, and it's one of the last pages in the strategy that you can look at. And so, all right, we launched almost a year ago now, and I wanted to share where we are. So in terms of the 59 total actions, we have 38 of them in progress. 11 of them are what we're calling on track, and then 10 of them have not been started. And I think that's pretty amazing, because if you remember the chart from the before, there's lots of things that have been accelerated or have already started that we necessarily didn't identify in that immediate 0 to 1 timeframe. And so we're developing the year 1 summary report. We're gonna have that available sometime in the summer. Of course, given the pandemic, we're gonna think about the right timing for that. We're redesigning our Resilient 305 website so that it's more reflective and that it will have all the information on the year 1 activities. So that's at resilient305.com. We're also developing a Resilient 305 hub, ArcGIS hub, where you're going to be able to track implementation and find out about additional events that are related to different action items and see what's been going on. There's also monthly meetings of the implementation team, and we call that Pivot. It stands for Progress, Innovation, Vision for Our Shared Tomorrow. And that group is mostly made up of the CROs, representatives from the Miami Foundation, from another network that I'll talk about in a little bit, and then staff. And we're hoping to, as we move forward, to expand that group as action items need additional focus. And then in relation to the current pandemic, we're thinking about what's the role of resilience in pandemic recovery? How can we do better after this is all said and done? And so that's actually an action item in the strategy, and it's action 34 called Advancing Pandemics Communications. So we're gonna be working with the Beacon Council, with the Department of Health to see and of course, the resilience offices from each of the 3 entities and from our multiple cities and community groups. And so it's this constant, so we're implementing, we're planning and learning, but it's not, you know, doing one at each time. It's really a cyclical thing. We're learning as we continue, because again, we get shocks like the pandemic that we didn't think we were going to get. And so it's thinking about how can we do better. And we really can't do it without partnerships like those that are, you know, these are just a snapshot of some of the people and groups that were identified in the strategy to lead actions. Again, it's not only a government plan, it's a community plan. And so we're going to be relying on all these organizations for support, for guidance, for expertise, and for to help us magnify the work that's doing. And then I said that Pathways was really about working across jurisdictions and communities. And so this was at our launch in May of last year. And we have multiple municipalities that have signed on saying that we want to be a part of this and we're going to help implement some of the actions. And so the Miami Foundation got a grant from JP Morgan Chase to help with some of this municipal outreach. And all of these municipalities that you see here reflected have signed on to the Mayor's Resilience Pledge. And so we're really trying to activate that network to have a broad impact. One of the new partnerships that have come, I'm sure a lot of you, or maybe some of you have heard that 100 Resilient Cities was, as a group, sunsetted. And so, and one of the additional initiatives from the Rockefeller Foundation was the creation of this Adrienne Arsht Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center. And their goal is to reach 1 billion people with resilient solutions in the next 10 years. And this is a partnership out of, the group is based out of Washington, DC. And they've been really highlighting a lot of the work that they're doing is wanting to highlight people and how people really make a difference in our community and are the ones creating resilient solutions. So we're grateful for their partnership. And I know we've been engaged with the Cleo Institute and lots of the other community groups that I'm sure all of you are a part of. And then the last partnership that we've, the other kind of transition from 100RC was the creation of this Global Resilient Cities Network. And this network is made up of chief resilience officers and staff from the offices from around the world who were part of 100 Resilient Cities. And this is really about sharing and learning, and there's weekly webinars that are hosted for the network. And right now, I know that I've learned a ton from things that have happened in Milan and in Wuhan, and today we heard from the mayor from Louisville, Kentucky. And so it's about collaborating and sharing and really taking the best practices and thinking about how can we recover better and faster in a more equitable and just way. And so I'm just going to close with some of the sea level rise work that we're doing in the county. I was asked to talk about some of our adaptation work, and Galen's going to cover our mitigation work. But one of the major projects that I think most people are going to be interested in going on, the Army Corps of Engineers has a series, 4 different studies that they're focusing in on Miami-Dade County. And one of them is this Miami-Dade Back Bay Coastal Storm Risk Management Study, which is a mouthful. But the important part is that they're looking at how to protect us. And when I say us, it's if you think of the barrier islands like Key Biscayne and Miami Beach, it's everything west from there. How do we protect that area from the damage from storm surge? So with hurricanes, that water that comes onto land as a result of the winds. And it's a 3-year project, and we're expecting the draft report to be released in May 22nd. And we need everyone's comments to be a part of that. Do you think what they're proposing is a good idea, is a bad idea? And then what's important is that at the end, when the Army Corps signs off on the project, we're eligible for federal funding for that project. So it's a cost share. So the federal government will provide some of that money, and then the county will provide some of the others. So it's a tremendous opportunity to have something to protect us from coastal storm surge risk, and where, you know, the taxpayers in Miami-Dade County won't share the brunt of that expense. And so we really need your support in that area. The other thing, the county has been working on a sea level rise strategy, which is in support of Action 7 in the Resilient 305 strategy. And we expect that to be coming out in June. And it outlines 5 different adaptation approaches that we could look at in our community. So these are things that we, when thinking about adapting to sea level rise, can our communities build on fill? Do we want to build like the Keys? Do we want to create more blue and greenways? Do we want to look at blue and green infrastructure so that we don't only have seawalls? Or do we want to build on high ground around transit? And what's important is that these are going to be recommendations, but it's going to be up to the community to really envision and design what they want their neighborhood or their city to look like in 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And finally, I'm just going to close out with an additional project that our adaptation team is working on. And so they are looking at the Little River area shore crest, and we got funding from the state to do what's called an adaptation action area. And all that means is that you're going to really focus in on that area, do additional planning with input from the community. And we're working with Cleo and the University of Miami and Catalyst Miami to engage the community on what actions they would like. And then, of course, it drives investment. So it helps prioritize money going into the areas that need it the most. And this is being done in partnership with the City of Miami and other municipalities that are have jurisdiction in that area. And so I'm probably a couple, 1 or 2 minutes over time, but again, thank you. My email address is there. Please follow Resilient 305 on social media, and Galen, I'll take it over. I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Thank you, Karina. Yeah, Galen, please share your screen with us. Galen's gonna discuss more of the mitigation strategies that are being adopted at the county level.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks everyone for coming. As Karina said, we have a long history of sustainability in the county, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what we are doing to address greenhouse gases and sustainability in general. Before 2015, the office that we work in was called the Office of Sustainability. And if you look at this timeline, you can see that we were a founding member of ICLEI and have had an eye on climate change since the early 90s. And I can make this presentation available to you so you can come back and look at all the details. What we're going to do today is really take a quick look at all of the good work that we've been doing over the years. Over the last couple of years since 2015, I think a lot of our outward focus has been on adaptation as an office, really elevating that work because it's super critical. And we're also trying to now make a push for bringing new focus to the greenhouse gas emissions issues and sustainability work that we're doing in the office. So if you look here, we have a greenhouse gas inventory, and you can see that most of our emissions come from transportation or buildings, which is that combination of residential, industrial, and commercial energy. And we've been tracking our emissions for a long time. It's gotten increasingly comprehensive. So if you look on this chart, you can see our last completed emissions inventory was in 2015. And part of the reason it has risen is because we're including more and more of the community activity. The reason that we're tracking our emissions is so that we can reach our target. And the Board of County Commissioners set a target of 80% reductions below 2008 levels by 2050. And as you can see, if we stick with business as usual, we will not make it. And right now, we need to do a lot of work to be able to get to our target. We do have something to work off of, though. In 2010, the county created Greenprint, which is a community-wide sustainability plan. And it had a plan for reducing emissions. Unfortunately, we haven't completely met that plan. And so right now, what we're trying to do as an office is build off of that solid base that is Greenprint and work with Resilient 305, which is really the umbrella for all of our work, and develop a Greenprint 2020 update. So that update is focused primarily on the climate action plan, which is one component of Greenprint, and trying to identify what we are doing and what we can do to meet our goal, which is 80% greenhouse gas reductions by 2050. The way that we're organizing this and doing this relatively quick and dirty update is that we're using proven high impact practices following guidance from the Rocky Mountain Institute's Carbon-Free Regions and Carbon-Free Cities handbooks. And they focus on specific areas, including energy, buildings, transportation, which is good because that is where most of our emissions come from, and waste. And we're also looking at planning and land use. I'm going to go through a lot of information very quickly, so feel free to ask questions later. And part of the reason that I'm presenting this is so that you have access to it later. Energy is really important. We've been working in the county on a number of fronts to increase the ability for the county and the community to get access to municipal solar and renewable supply. So we have a solar feasibility study that's identified 238 facilities that can take solar on the roof that are owned by the county, and we're working towards that. We've also worked to enable solar co-ops within the community. But most importantly, we are developing our relationship with FPL. We have an ongoing relationship with FPL, which is our primary utility provider. They provide us with 99% of our energy. We pay them about $100 million a year. And right now, they're at about 2% solar and renewable. Fortunately, they have plans to increase the amount of renewable energy. And we are looking beyond 2029. So we're going to have to make our own plans. But I think one of the goals is to point out to point a path towards how we can increase our sustainability and meet our goal of 80% reductions by 2050, and how we are going to have to do that in partnership with our utility. What we can do in terms of buildings is much more focused and something that we have been working on. So for example, out of Greenprint and all of that work, we implemented Energy Cap, which is a software system for tracking energy use. And it's been very successful within the county. And this year we're adding water use as well. It tracks every building. And a conservative estimate is that we're saving $2 million a year because of the use of this program. We are also making specific efficiency investments, which is one of the high impact practices. We do that through energy performance contracts and SEAM, which is save energy and money. They're both ways of investing in energy efficiency that will pay off within usually 20 years or less. One of the major signature initiatives of our office is the Sustainable Buildings Program. It was enacted in 2004, implemented in 2007, and it requires most new buildings in the county to achieve LEED Silver certification or higher. And recently we've had 19 projects that have received LEED and 43 that are in the process. It takes a while to get that certification. And this year we are working on an update that would include linear infrastructure. So basically roads, parking lots, pipes, pump stations, things like that. They would be included through Envision, which is like LEED, another certification. The benefits of this are huge. LEED certified buildings use 30% less water, up to 50% less energy, and and produce a lot less waste. In addition, we have Building Efficiency 305, which is a program that started in 2017 and is inspired by other programs that have happened around the country. It really aims to take our large buildings, which are some of the largest energy consumers in the community, and help them become more efficient. And we do that through benchmarking, which is essentially measuring how much energy you use, how much waste you produce, and keeping track of that, and being able to share it with the owners and to some degree with the public. And we've started by doing that with county buildings. And we've also developed training with the University of Miami to train building operators in the region, and have been working on PACE financing. The benefits have been confirmed by 2 outside studies and can be over $100 million a year within our community, mostly accruing to building operators, making them cheaper, but also significantly reducing greenhouse gas emissions. A couple of things that I would like you guys to know about in terms of BE 305, these are ways that you can participate to some degree. We have the BE 305 Challenge, which will be launching this year, and it's essentially a 5-year commitment or pledge to reduce energy and water consumption 20%. And what it'll involve is building operators or owners sharing their information with each other and meeting different goals. And we will have small rewards so that the participants can tout how excellent they are. And we're working out the details. But if you live in a building with more than 5 units, you can encourage the owners to participate. And the way you can learn more about it is by going to the BE 305 hub. That's an ArcGIS hub like the one that we're going to create for Resilient 305. And this one's great. One of the things that we've done as part of BE 305 is map all of the buildings that are larger than 20,000 square feet, because that's what we define as a large building. And so you can look around through within your district and see where those large buildings are. And you can also get a lot of detailed information about how to increase efficiency and how benchmarking works. Just to keep on moving, transportation is a key component of emissions reductions. And in Resilient 305, objective number 3 is all about creating mobility options. A couple of examples are focusing on the SMART plan, which integrates also with the sea level rise strategy, where we are trying to focus development around specific transportation corridors so that we really can help people get around without cars. And in addition, the Better Bus Project is part of Resilient 305 and part of this transition that we're hoping to make towards electrification. It's not just cars, but also buses. And electrification, which is part of Resilient 305, has many benefits. There's a study that came out last year that was done for Duke, and it shows that it found that if we essentially adopt a conservative pathway on EVs, we as consumers in Florida or owners of cars in Florida can expect to gain $9.5 billion by 2050. And just customers to public utilities will save $2.2 billion. And this doesn't even add in the societal and health gains, which are just massive. The way that the county is working towards this transition is that we have created a target, multiple targets, in fact. So the Board of County Commissioners has said that they want to reduce gasoline and diesel consumption, 30% and 70% respectively by 2028. That's within county operations. But also one way that they want to get there is by electrifying the bus system. And we've ordered 33 battery electric buses. That is a small portion of the 750 buses that we own right now, but it is a step in the right direction. Procurement is a challenge, and this is a good way to get started. I'm just going to go back really quick. If you take a look at this probability distribution on the bottom left there, you can see that we want to be in the beginning of this curve so that we can take advantage of the transition as much as possible. In addition, we have a waste to energy recovery facility. I'm not sure if everybody in the county knows that, but we burn a lot of our waste. And it has multiple positive impacts, especially since it's been updated with scrubbers. We can provide energy for 35,000 homes, and we recover 24,000 tons of metal every year. This facility is aging, and there will be a proposal to replace it with an even more efficient facility, but that is in the works. And in addition, we capture methane both from our landfills and from our wastewater facilities, and are improving those capture practices quickly. All right, getting to the end, just a couple more resources I want you guys to know about that are mentioned in Resilient 305. The Comprehensive Development Master Plan, and I will send a link to this, is our plan for the next 30 years. And this year, there is an amendment proposed to add adaptation and mitigation into the plan explicitly. So please follow that closely. It could pass this summer. And should also know about our Parks and Open Space master plan. It's a beautiful plan, and it is being aggressively implemented by the Parks Department. One thing that they're doing is 13 studies of sea level rise impacts on parks. And so they're working with us to make sure that that's consistent with our sea level rise strategy. And they are also working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions at the same time. All right, and that is what I have to share today.
Thank you, Gail, and I really appreciate that. And now we're going to have Julieta, our Associate Program Manager, discuss just a few of the items, the action items that are in the Resilient 305 strategy that we can engage in as an individual and for our community, and then talk a little bit about civic engagement before we get to the Q&A.
All right. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. So thank you for staying with us. I'm going to highlight 3 different action items as part of the Resilient 305 strategy. And this part's going to be a little bit more interactive, so we're going to get familiar with our chat function. Action 23 is buy local. The goal of this action is to provide support for local businesses. So there are lots of partners as part of this initiative, and they're working on developing a resource directory of local businesses, including minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And they're also compiling a resource guide for local businesses that are interested in pursuing contracts with the local government so that they can expand their business portfolio. And now what we can do as individuals and as a community to support this initiative would be shopping locally and voting with our dollars if possible. If you have a farmer's market in your community, or if you have a CSA, which is a community supported agriculture initiative, I recommend you look into those. On a free level, posting reviews on social media for small businesses such as Facebook and Yelp, they can be really beneficial for small and local businesses because it allows them to get recognition from other people who might not be familiar with them. If you have any sort of talents that you can offer to a small business and you can volunteer, you can offer your services to those that don't have an online presence and either help them with their website or an online campaign or do an Instagram campaign, something to expand their reach. And lastly would be contacting elected officials. So for instance, I mentioned shopping at farmers markets is a great thing to do. If you live in a neighborhood that does not have a farmers market, that's definitely something you can contact your elected official to do and ask them, what is the step needed in order to incorporate a farmers market into my community? Why don't we have one? And if you have a farmers market in your community, you can definitely also contact your elected officials and work to expand that farmers market or bring in more farmers markets to your community. Buying local also has great economic benefits. It stimulates economic growth and keeps the money in the local community. It also creates career opportunities, particularly for minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And it diversifies the industries and jobs that are available in our neighborhoods. Action 24, be counted. This relates to the 2020 census. For those of you who don't know, the census is a national initiative held every 10 years to ensure an accurate count of how many people live in the United States. As far as the county initiative goes, they want to ensure an accurate Census 2020 count by reaching out to hard to count populations and by providing public education about the importance of participating in the census. This year is the first year that the census is able to be completed online. So if your household has not completed the census yet, what you can do is first complete your household census. So if there are any students on this call, you can ask the adults or guardians in your household to see if they've completed the census. And if they haven't, go online or fill out the paper form that was mailed to most households. If you have already completed it, encourage others to complete it. We want to make sure that everybody is counted because that influences the amount of funding that the federal government provides to communities. If you're interested in volunteering or keeping up with the latest updates on a virtual platform, you can sign up for updates with the United States Census Bureau. They send out newsletters. And as a result of this COVID pandemic, they are transitioning to a lot of remote and volunteering opportunities. So I do recommend you engage with that. The Miami-Dade County Census Task Force, they also have monthly meetings. I checked the website and they haven't updated anything since November of 2019, but definitely reach out to them and see, what are they doing? Is there anything you can assist with? Do they need volunteers, or how can we make sure that our entire community is activated in the census initiative? And lastly, we do have a virtual opportunity. If you would like to be part of a commission meeting, Miami-Dade County has a commission meeting opportunity on May 5, and we will be sending out that registration link, but you can connect from any device and join in the commission meeting. A commissioner will be giving updates on the census and what the county is doing to make sure that everybody is accurately counted. So in the chat box, tell us if you have already filled out your household census. You can type in yes or no. Oh, that's so good. Okay, we have a majority of yes for those who have completed their census. Please make sure to invite others to complete their census. Check in on your friends, on your social networks, and your peers, your neighbors, and reach out to them and make sure that they get counted as well. The census is also available to be filled out online in different languages. For your knowledge, this is a map that demonstrates the census participation as of 2 days ago. And what you can see, the national average of census participation as of 2 days ago is about 56%. And there are several neighborhoods in Miami-Dade County that fall below that. So I encourage you to take a few seconds and recognize where your neighborhood is and think about how you can assist others in hard to reach areas to make sure that they fill out their census as well. It's very important to ensure that we get funding for our community. Third action, action 35, increasing neighborhood response. This is in particular to extreme weather events like hurricanes. And the action goal is to expand something called CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. They educate residents about disaster preparedness. They host trainings and certification efforts to certify volunteers as CERT responders so that when there is a hurricane, they are enabled to help their community. Now, what can we do in order to expand the neighborhood response to hurricanes? Hurricane season starts June 1st, so we're approximately 1 month away. The CERT training in Miami-Dade has been postponed as a result of COVID because they cannot do in-person trainings. However, because this is part of a national effort, you can complete your CERT training online. So if you go to ready.gov/CERT, they do have materials to take the course in Spanish and English. They also have other materials in different languages. I've seen Korean, Vietnamese, Braille, English, Spanish, and Chinese, but you might discover some more as well. On that website, they have worksheets and games. You can order pamphlets to distribute in your building or in your homeowners association, to leave in your grocery store. They have all kinds of things that you can order to be sent to your home or through virtual PDFs. Meeting your neighbors is a great way to enhance neighborhood response. Now, I know this is particularly challenging as a result of coronavirus and social distancing, but consider if you live in a condominium, for instance, starting a building group chat or some way that you can encourage conversation between your neighbors. And contact elected officials, ask them to continue prioritizing hurricane preparedness so that we can all be safe. So now we're going to go back into the chat box and we're going to practice this, sharing hurricane response tips. So answer this question. What is a hurricane preparedness tip that you wish others knew? So share your best hurricane preparedness tips in the chat so that we can all learn from each other. Okay, well, these are good. Fill your bathtub with water, evacuate when encouraged. Knowing your closest shelter, your evacuation procedures. Pruning your trees. Don't wait until the last minute. That's definitely true. Okay, these are so great. We're gonna go on to the last one. And increasing civic engagement. We want to encourage all of you on this call, as well as everybody that the Cleo Institute interacts with, to expand beyond political hobbyism. And what is political hobbyism? Essentially, this is what's called backseat civic engagement. This refers to activities such as reading the news and staying informed. Many people believe that this is enough to be civically engaged, but we want to encourage others to go beyond just staying informed. Because once you have that education, whether it's about the climate crisis or any other social issue of national importance, we want to encourage you to do something about it. And first, make it a family and community effort and bring others in, because there is a power in numbers. I challenge you today to find out who your elected officials are. Find out who your local representatives are, who your state and national representatives are, and contact them. Many are on social media, so if you have an Instagram, a Twitter, a Facebook, you can message them. You can also email and call them. You can write letters to them, and they can be about all kinds of things. You can ask them, hey, I want to know what you are doing about this issue, or I want to ask you to do more about this issue, or I want to commend you for doing something about this issue, and I want to encourage you to continue your actions. So definitely start that conversation. Elected officials do read this. So they have an entire team that is dedicated to reading letters from constituents, and you do have that right to contact elected officials. Attending municipal and county commission meetings. At this time, many municipal and county meetings have been canceled or postponed or have been cut off from the public in the interest of public safety. But we do want to encourage you to share virtual opportunities. So just like that county commission meeting on May 5, which we'll share that link to, there are many other commission meetings that have a virtual participation option. Writing letters to the editor. Letters to the editor are short pieces, about 250 words, which you can write to magazines or newspapers about an issue that you care about. And joining larger advocacy efforts. Again, there is power in numbers, and we want to encourage you all to join an effort that is already existing so that we can amplify what is being done. And lastly, if you are interested either this year or years that are coming up, I recommend you to consider running for office. Miami-Dade County has a candidate qualifying handbook that you can download online about what it takes to run for office. And the barriers to entry are pretty low for most of the positions. For some positions, you need a $25 or $100 sort of registration fee so that you are on the ballot. And there are many positions that you don't need a lot of political experience in order to run for those. So I definitely encourage you to run for office if that's something that interests you and if you are eligible for. So I'm going to pass it over to Olivia, but in the meantime, if you have any other ideas for civic engagement or your favorite civic engagement ideas, definitely share those in the chat as we pass it over to Olivia. And thank you for your time and joining us today.
Thank you, Julieta, and thank you, Karina and Galen. I really enjoyed all three of your presentations. And as Julieta is pointing out, the importance of civic engagement cannot be underestimated. The title of this webinar is It Takes a Village, and I just want to drive that point home again and let everybody know that we all have a role and a duty to play in moving our community in the right direction. We can't just depend on government, we also have to use our voice, and we can't underestimate the power of our voice. So I want to just quickly poll everybody. Julieta, can you launch that poll? And I just want to see where everyone stands in terms of their civic engagement in general. This is not, to be judgmental. It's really just to kind of gauge. So how often do you reach out to your elected officials? Weekly, monthly, a few times a year, less than once a year, or never? So it looks like it's pretty diverse. I'm just going to wait a few seconds. Okay, great. If we want to end that poll and share the results, I think this really highlights that for all of us, there's a lot of different things that we could do to sort of improve our civic engagement, and I'm including myself in this. And one quick tip I want to offer before we do Q&A is that I have programmed all of my elected officials' numbers in my telephone, and therefore I have no excuse not to call them when something pops up or when I'm concerned about a particular issue. So let's go ahead and take some questions. I can see Galen was already answering a few. I'm gonna just say them live so everyone can hear. And this is a great question asking, can you talk about planning to account for affordable housing due to concerns about climate gentrification? Karina or Galen, I'm not sure if one of you'd like to take that question.
Hi, thank you for that question. So in terms of affordable housing to planning for climate gentrification, so the Department of it's the department that PHCD, Public Housing and Community Development Department, is really in charge of affordable housing. But one of the main things that we're employing is a goal to get to more than 10,000 affordable housing units in the county. So of course, we're working together with all of our cities because, there's jurisdictional lines, unfortunately. But in the county, we've to accelerate that goal of getting to 10,000, there's a program from the Department of the U.S. Department of Housing that is called the RAD program. And that program is the rental assistance demonstration, and that's accelerating progress by allowing different funding with private developers and incentives for them to build more affordable housing. And in terms of climate gentrification, really the long-term vision, and one of the maps that Galen showed was our land use map. And the vision for adapting to sea level rise and the land use policy is to really concentrate people and increase density in areas that are higher elevation. And so to do that, and also provide incentives and to encourage developments that have mixed use, so that it has small businesses, but that it also has affordable and workforce housing as part of that. And so those are given extra points when they come to be approved by our, but when our planning folks and our zoning folks look at that, we're intentionally zoning and planning for parcels to have that, to increase access to affordable and housing.
Thank you, Karina. Our next question is asking if there's going to be a study to determine how the air quality has improved in Miami during the COVID pandemic due to a reduction in driving and flying and overall transportation.
I think I can like briefly address that. I'm going to put a little more resources in the box. But essentially, we have limited tracking capabilities, and also my understanding from the answer that I heard from Durham is that we had some air quality bumps over the last month from burning that was happening in the Caribbean and South America. So if you guys saw that, we had like those very crazy sunsets and moon rises that were really intense a few weeks ago, and the air quality really actually wasn't that great. So we'll have to see what happens, but we only have 3 official air quality monitors in the county. And so it's not going to be like super micro data that's available.
Okay, thank you.
And, Olivia, if I could just add, and
Go for it.
That's in terms of air quality, but in terms of monitoring, I think this opportunity where the county and Durham, the Department of Environmental and Resource Management, is taking the opportunity to do additional testing of water quality. So I think that we're going to see a little bit of data coming out from them about the state of our water. I mean, I think pretty much everyone has seen what's happening in Venice and around the world. So hopefully we'll have a story to tell from that.
Yeah, and our water quality monitoring infrastructure is much more robust. I put a link in the Q&A to a New York Times resource where you can see what our, basically what our air quality is compared to other cities around the world. It's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Galen. I'll share that link with everyone in the follow-up email. We're actually at time. I just want to quickly, again, thank all of our panelists today, Karina, Galen, and my colleague Julieta. And I want to thank all of you that joined us on today's webinar. I would like to challenge all of you who are not used to reaching out to your elected officials to this week or next week, go ahead, find who your local commissioner is or your state representative or your senators, and reach out to them and discuss something that is of concern for you. Because again, we really can't afford a disengaged public, especially when it comes to major crises like the climate crisis. And I would like to just point out that the COVID crisis has really laid bare some of the big problems that we're experiencing in our communities, like the inadequacies of our healthcare system and all of the existing inequalities that are part of our communities. And these are the same when it comes to the climate crisis. It's just, they happen on a much slower scale because climate change is slower. So I encourage everyone to stay informed, stay engaged, and Cleo has some upcoming webinars in May, so you can check out our website. We'll be posting those regularly in the event section. And just to sort of reiterate, it takes a village, and we all play a very important role in moving our community in the right direction and strengthening community resilience. So thank you again, everyone, for being on the webinar today, and you'll get a follow-up email with the recording. And I'm wishing you all a safe, happy, and good weekend.